Hey, DM Hayes here. Critical Role has kicked off with its first session of Campaign 4, and it's not in Exandria. Not only do we have Brennan Lee Mulligan's brand new world, Araman, to learn all about, there's also more than a dozen new PCs plus all the NPCs in this world. So let's take a crash course in Araman right now. So the biggest and most obvious difference between Exandria and Araman is the condition of the gods. While Exandria is 1,000 years out from the Calamity, a time when the Prime Gods fought the Betrayer Gods, and in the process, half of the mortals on Exandria were wiped out and large parts of the landscape completely destroyed. In Araman, the battle was gods versus mortals, and it was only 70 years ago, and the mortals won. There are no gods left in this world. Originally, there were 7 lords of creation. As far as I know, they haven't all been named or titled, but we will get those as the story goes on, I'm sure. We do know that there was Salandri, who is the goddess of life in the woodlands, the shaper of the elves, and there was a god of war as well, who claimed the orcs as his own. Now, the orcs rebelled against the god of war, decided to break free from their god's control. Brennan has talked a lot about this thing with the orcs in interviews and pre-Campaign 4 crit roll content. And he says it was inspired by The Lord of the Rings. He was always fascinated by the orcs, and he wondered what would happen if that massive army just turned around and turned on Saruman and Sauron. So in Araman, the orcs did exactly that. They took back their independence, and when the other gods rose to fight back and to help the god of war, instead of helping, a lot of the mortals that they ruled over realized they could do the same thing. Hey, if the orcs can do it, we can do it too. And they all turned against the gods to free themselves from their wrath. And that kicked off the Shaper's War and the end of gods in Araman. Because of this, magic is a little off in this world. We don't know what happens when characters die. Is there no god to ship them to the afterlife? Is there even an afterlife? They have no idea. And also, the magic they cast is just a little off. We haven't seen much in this episode. We saw a couple druidic cantrips and a healing word from Travis, but we should see some more magic as the campaign goes. Eagle-Eye viewers might have noticed that Wakander, Sam's character, is supposed to be a cleric, but he has warlock or sorcerer stats, pretty obviously. I'm pretty sure divine magic is non-existent in Araman, and whether Wick knows he is or not, he's definitely not a cleric. He's not using divine magic, not with a wisdom score that low. So let's get to what's happening right now. That's about all we know so far from the history, but 70 years later, our campaign starts in Dol Makjar, a city in the region of Kahad. And it's a city that glorifies those mortal heroes. There's actually statues of these heroes that protrude from the walls of the city, and they appear to hold back the mountainous ranges that surround them. Some other locations that have been mentioned so far, the Rookery, which is the arts and poetry district of Dol Makjar. That's where the majority of episode 1 takes place, and it's where Hallandal Fang's theater is, where your bards live. There's also Tir Cruthu, the land of the fairies, but it seems the door to Tir Cruthu is gone, and the fate of the city still unclear. And since that has happened, our fairy character, Thimble, played by Laura Bailey, appears to be aging for the first time in her life. There are also 2 other cities mentioned that remain pretty mysterious. Dol Rungja, which is another city in Kahad, and the Mornvale, which is a place very far from Dol Makjar where Ashley's creepy character Valus comes from. In the first episode, Valus shows up to the funeral that the rest of the cast is attending because something was stolen from that city, and she's looking for this elven relic from the Shaper's War called the Stone of Night Song. So our story kicks off with the execution of Thiazi Fang, a character connected in one way or another to each of our PCs. Thiazi was a war hero because he fought in the War of Axe and Vine a couple of years prior to his death. Now, since being celebrated in that war, Thiazi has been a major player in a rebellion called the Falconers Rebellion against the Sundered Houses of Dol Makjar. We don't know much about this rebellion so far. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. But it does seem very clear that the rebellion failed. And in our opening episode, in the opening moments of our first episode, Thiazi is being hung for his crimes against the Sundered Houses. Now, there was a plan to rescue Thiazi from his execution, which Brennan goes into detail on what the plan was supposed to be in the episode 1 cooldown, which you can watch on Beacon. But I won't spoil that right away. We'll let that come out in the actual story first. But several PCs and NPCs were involved in that plan. However, something clearly went wrong because Thiazi is killed in the cold open of the episode. Now let's get extra nerdy and take a look at the etymology of Thiazi. As we know Brennan is the best of us when it comes to nerdiness. He loves lore and history, and the name Thiazi has a connection to Norse mythology. And knowing Brennan, that's not a coincidence. In mythology, Thiazi was a giant, and he was often portrayed as a large bird.
I can still hear the falcons cry!
In his most famous story, Thiazi kidnapped Ioun, the goddess of apples and life. He carried her away in his large bird talons. Now, Ioun created the apples that gave the gods their immortality. So with her gone and her apple supply deplenished, the gods started graying and aging. We're already seeing some obvious parallels. First, we've got Thimble aging for the first time, but also, I believe the Stone of Night Song had something to do with the elven immortality as well.
The goddess of life so loved her elven children that even in catastrophe, the destruction of their bodies, would their immortal souls never have to know hardship or pain.
It must be nice, Jesus.
The Stone of Night Song, you believe, was created after the original guardian spirit, that immortal nightingale, a celestial that took the wings of nightingale, sort of like a night angel.
Which is why it has the bird, yeah?
The stone was created after that celestial's destruction in the Shaper's War.
And Thiazi himself, with Thimble, did end up taking that from the elves of Mornvale. So that totally tracks with our mythology story of him taking immortality from the gods. In the end, Loki brought Ioun home and set a trap for Thiazi. So when he came back in eagle form to take her again, as he flew into Asgard, traps set off and he burned to death. Now, I don't quite know yet who the Loki character is in this story, although it's been heavily hinted that if we're going to make a direct comparison to one of the PCs, it's Sir Julian Davenos. It is said in episode 1 that Julian is the one who defeated Thiazi in battle and captured him. So he might be the Loki stand-in for this story. And I mean, let's face it, he's got some pretty Loki energy.
And just quietly look down upon him. And the only shame is I couldn't watch you die twice. And then I walk away.
As we learn more about Thiazi Fang in the context of Campaign 4, we'll start to see more comparisons to his mythology counterpart, and it's going to be really interesting to follow along. I am really hooked in on this story already. I'm obsessed with Araman. In a future video, we will do a deep dive on the characters and how they all connect to each other, and more importantly, how they connect to the mysterious war hero turned hanged rebellion martyr, Thiazi Fang. What did I miss about the lore of Araman? Did you pick up on anything I didn't? Any questions? Any predictions? Comment below, like, and subscribe. And that's the end of today's session. Goodbye.